Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to another video on the channel. So we've got my updated draft team for game week 1 today that we're going to discuss. Also going to use data and visuals to try and explain and justify my thoughts as well. If that is the sort of content that you're into, please do subscribe. The support on the channel has been awesome in pre-season, and I really do appreciate it. We're a small channel trying to grow. So if you can help us continue to do so, be really grateful as well. So let's take a look at the team. And in goal, there is not really any changes. I'm sticking with Jordan Pickford. I did think about Dean Henderson in goal, but for me, Jordan Pickford, even though he is at that premium price of 5.5 million, he's also been the best scoring goalkeeper in each of the last few seasons. So I think you get what you pay for with him. When we take a look at the data, we can see that Jordan Pickford is ranking really well with clean sheets and total saves, which is what you want from your goalkeeper, right? You want clean sheet potential, but if he's not keeping clean sheets, he still has the opportunity to get some save points as well. I think I will also just say that any of these charts here, I do talk about more in depth in other videos during the week. So if you want to go check them out and just see them in a bit more detail, go check out the channel, and the latest videos for the last few weeks will all be in there. So when we take a look at the defence, I've gone for Mark Gahey here, and there is quite a lot of change from last week. I've kept Wan-Bissaka, but he's the only one who stays. Now, I was thinking about the combination of Dean Henderson, Tarkowski, or Pickford and Mark Gahey, but the Pickford-Mark Gahey combination saves me 500,000, which really will go quite a long way when we're looking at the rest of the team. Now, when we look at defenders from last season with defensive actions per game and FPL points per game, you can see that all three of my 4.5 million defenders are ranking pretty well. So this is a chart we used earlier in the week where 4.5 million defenders are in blue, 5 and 5.5 million defenders are in green, and the 6 million premiums are in red. And these are just the defenders who played at least 30 games in the Premier League last season. So we know they're pretty reliable, and we know they're going to start pretty much every week. So because defensive actions are now a thing, and if you're not sure what those are, that's when a defender, if he gets blocks, clearances, interceptions, or tackles in a game, if he gets a combination of those 10 or more within the same game, he'll get 2 extra points. So overall, the points per game for last season, there's not much difference between these players and the premium players. But with defensive actions, they do rank quite highly in comparison. And I think the reason for that is that your premium defenders, they play for better teams. So when they lose the clean sheet, they're not got the opportunity to get those tackles and interceptions because they already have the ball, right? They're probably taking, trying to win the game. Whereas your mid-table to low-table teams, once they lose that clean sheet, they can still get those extra points through defensive actions. I think that is something really important to consider mid-season. I think it does make these 4.5 million defenders a lot more valuable. These three probably going to be a lock in my team as it stands, unless there is some issues with injuries or transfers, because I just think fixtures don't matter as much for them. You know, in the past, you might have said, why are you starting Matt Gahey game week 1? He's got Chelsea away. That's a tough fixture. And I would have said, well, you're right. He's not very likely to get a clean sheet or an attacking return in that game. I'll stick him on the bench. This season, if he loses that clean sheet, he could still get those 2 extra points. And if he does keep a clean sheet, he's probably defending as well, gets those 2 extra points and some bonus. You could really see some massive defensive hauls. And that's obviously a big if, but the point is that those extra little points could keep trickling over. Now, I've put Kukurea in here. Last week I had Munoz and Kirkes, and I've really trimmed down the defense, but I do think there is value in having a premium defender in there as well. Now, the reason I've gone for Kukurea is because not only is he pretty much certain to start every game for Chelsea, I think his fixtures are good, but he's also more attacking. So I'd say he's more likely to play than a Gvardiol, Aït-Nouri, Kirkes, or Robertson, and he's more attacking than a Saliba and a Van Dijk, and he still offers somewhere in the middle for defensive actions. So I think he is the best premium defender to get in at the start of the season. We'll also just say with your last defender on the bench, I've gone for Esteve here from Burnley. Just get a player from a promoted team. There's no point getting a defender from team elsewhere that's more established in the league because at 4 million, they probably won't play. And it also takes up a slot from those players from that team that you might want elsewhere. So if I had, Esteve from Burnley here, I'm very unlikely to want three other Burnley players. Whereas if I had a Crystal Palace defender here at 4 mil, well, I might want three other Crystal Palace players at some point in the season, and having a cheap defender last on my bench would block that off. I also think promoted teams are going to defend a lot more, so you're more likely to get those defensive actions as well. So in midfield, and there's a little bit of change here. There's no Salah in this one. There is Saka and Palmer. And I've also added in Kudus as well. So for me, Mohamed Kudus is a really interesting one. Burnley game at home looks great. And I know people are sort of saying with Saka, oh, is he going to start? Is he on penalties or not anymore? And we don't know that yet. But I think that Man United game away is a good one to go with. But both of those, I'm not too sure of. There is the potential to transfer them both out in the first few weeks of the season, and I'll probably swap Saka to Bruno Fernandes and Kudus to Eze. But I think I'd rather have these two for game week one and see how it goes than Fernandes and Eze. So Palmer is pretty much a lock in the midfield. I think he's going to be in my team no matter what. And the next most certain player is probably Marmoush. I think he will play behind Haaland. And if he doesn't, then yeah, there's questions there. But I think he's one of those players that now he's in midfield. He's going to get an extra point for a goal. He's got potential for a clean sheet point as well. And 8.5 million. I think he's really undervalued. When we take a look at midfielders for last season, we can see Cole Palmer and Saka ranked pretty well. So this is a chart showing midfielders who had at least 15 goal contributions in the league last season. And even though Saka was injured for about half of it, it felt like he actually scored really well as well. We can see Eze and Fernandez are also here. So these would be the players I'd be bringing in. And it's a little bit risky to plan transfers this early, but that's what I'm thinking. So in terms of the midfield, Palmer and Marmoush are pretty much my locked players. The rest are for grabs. So up front, we've also had some changes. I've actually stuck with Isaac here. And I know that he's probably not going to be at Newcastle. If he is at Newcastle, you know, is he going to play? He might get left out of the squad, at the start of the season. But until that's sort of resolved, I think he is still a reasonable option to consider. If he goes to Liverpool, I think I'd probably keep him in my team. The other two, however, probably locks. I think Strand Larsen is someone who is really underrated this season in FPL, and at 6.5 million, he's a lot cheaper, or at least a little bit cheaper than a lot of the alternatives that you could be getting in your team. And the same for Gyökeres. We actually did a video earlier in the week looking how Gyökeres would compare with other strikers. And when we can see this chart here in terms of how clinical strikers were last season, so conversion rate is how many of their shots did they score? We can see that all three of these strikers rank pretty well. Now, Gyökeres' stats are from his Sporting Lisbon season in Portugal, but this is where he would have fitted in with the Premier League data. We can see Strand Larsen, whilst he's taking less shots, he's really clinical, and now Cunha's not there anymore. Is he going to take even more shots? And hopefully, if he maintains that same conversion rate, you could be looking at a great season. And the same for Gyökeres really as well. Now he's playing at Arsenal. Everyone has been saying, well, Arsenal, they're just a good striker away from winning the league. Well, it seems that they've got quite a clinical striker right now. So I would be interested to see how he's fitting in. And I'm sure people will be saying, oh, he's probably not going to start in game week one. And he might not, but he's going to start pretty much every other game. And I'm happy to sort of get him in now and save that transfer because anyone who's sort of saying, oh, you won't start game week one, like, you don't know, like nobody knows yet, do they? It's too far away. So it's just a discussion at this stage. So overall, I think the strengths are that it's a statistically a good team. I think we've shown with the charts here that a lot of these players are probably going to score quite well. I'm really interested to see how the defenders get on. And all of them pretty much have good initial fixtures. The ones that don't are probably these cheap defenders who we've talked about, if they don't keep a clean sheet, well, there's a chance that they can get points elsewhere. So fixtures are just a bit less relevant for these cheaper defenders this season. I'd say they're more important for the premium defenders who kind of need those clean sheets rather than those defensive actions. Weaknesses for me is that there's no Liverpool, so I'm not trying to do a team with no Liverpool in it. I think Salah is definitely an option, but they've made a lot of changes this summer. I know people are saying how they've transferred really well, and I'm sure they have. I'm not saying they've made bad transfers, but if that was a team in mid-table and they'd made, if they bought that many players and sold that many players, you'd be saying, oh, we'll see how they all gel in. There's kind of just this narrative that everyone assumes Liverpool are going to be great, and they might be. I do think there's a bit of a situation where you have to consider what if they aren't, and so I could downgrade Isak to a cheaper striker and upgrade Saka to Salah. That is a possibility, but it remains to be seen just how that might affect the rest of my squad. And another weakness is planning transfers already. So we talked about Saka and Kudus, game week 2, game week 3, possibly swapping those to Bruno Fernandes and Eze. It's risky to plan in transfers before the game week started, let alone 2 weeks before the season starts. I'm planning in these transfers because you don't know whether injuries or suspensions or rotations are going to impact your decision here. So that is a potential weakness, but I am interested just to see how it goes with those players and just be a little bit flexible. So let me know what you think about the team. Let me know your own thoughts with your own teams as well. I'm always happy to hear people's thoughts. I think it's really interesting because sometimes you can get a bit tunnel vision with your squad and you see a player really early on and you just, want them in your team and you can't see any negatives around them when there are. And so other people pointing that out is always really beneficial. And likewise, if you've got any questions as well, just pop them in the comments. Go join the mini league as well. First time we've had mini league. League code is on the screen right now. And go check out other videos as well. Like I say, we do each one a bit more in depth during the week. And then I try and use those charts and information to plan my overall team. So thank you very much for listening. Please do subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.